Welcome to Prose Cons, a podcast by writers for writers, brought to you by Precipice Fiction. Precipice Fiction would like to acknowledge the people of the Eora and Durag nations as the original custodians and storytellers of the land this podcast was created on.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Prose and Cons podcast. And we are 6 writers sharing our experiences, our tips, our tricks, and our journeys to making this beautiful thing that we love so much a career. And our journeys in that career as they grow. So we are 6 writers here, and while we have quite a few genres and areas and general mannerisms, I guess, I don't know, where we overlap, we all tend to have our own little takes on the writing world, and we have our own little niches that kind of add a nice diversity to this group. So we have Ali here, our resident film writer.
Hello.
We have Matan, our dark urban fantasy writer, aka city-ish writer, as he put it.
That is spot on.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We have James and we have Alex, who are our horror-leaning writers, more so.
Hello.
And then we have Paddy, who has turned out some truly magnificent sci-fi worlds. Say hello, Paddy.
Hello. Hi.
And then you have myself, Phoenix, and I started my writing journey with children's writing and poetry. So as I mentioned, we do have quite a lot of overlap. So while we have these kind of areas that we started and we love, none of us stay firmly in these lanes. And I think this is an important area of our writing relationships, both individually as well as collectively. All of us have a deep love of fantasy and sci-fi, and that's what brings us all here today. We are 6 writers. We each have 6 worlds, and we are Precipice Fiction.
Woo! Well done.
Yeah, that was, and in one take. That was.
Yeah. Oh, thank God. Okay.
Nailed it.
And with that, I'll pass it over so we can all say hello to you. Ali, we'll start with you. And give a little bit about yourself as well. Don't just say hello. That's not enough.
Sure. So hi, I'm Ali Burnham. I guess a bit of a background into me and my writing journey. So as Phoenix mentioned, I come from a film background. I did a bachelor in film and screen media. I came out the other end of that still script writing still my favorite part. Like I wanted to see if I fell in love if I was to fall in love with directing, costume design, editing. Like I just wanted to skill up on everything, see if I fell in love with other parts of the filmmaking process. But while I enjoyed it and skilled up in all that stuff, I still kind of came out the other end of my degree being like, no, writing's my jam. That's what I want to do. So then I applied to NIDA. NIDA has a writing for performance master's degree. I was lucky enough to get into that, did that degree. And out the other end of that, I, for about 6 years, have been freelancing as in film and TV, basically, primarily a lot of just TV development. So working on all the story Bibles, getting everything ready for pitches, just a lot of proposals. In terms of stuff I've had produced, I have 2 short films, which are both sci-fis. I have 1 feature film, which is on Netflix Australia. It is on a streaming service in the States, but its name is escaping me at the moment, so that's really bad. But the name of the film is Unsound, and that is a LGBT rom-com. Probably more rom than com. If I was to clarify where that falls exactly. Otherwise, ongoing projects I have at the moment is this Metropius we're franchise building at the moment, in that at the core of it is a 20-minute animation short film, but we're branching out into board games, card games, comic books. I've got comic books coming out this year that I've written for that. That's a sci-fi diesel punk world, so that's been really fun world building that. That kind of is all my published stuff, I guess, and other stuff you'll hear me talk about on the podcast. All my work in progress loves. I do have a fantasy series that I would love to write as books one day, so I've been working on those. I also have some historical fiction manuscripts as well.
Right on.
Right on.
Very well done. And James, we'll jump to you.
Hi, I'm James Healy. I guess I kind of grew up in a family that was very heavy into storytelling. It was a big family, so there was a lot of struggling for attention within the family. So you kind of had to be able to bring people along a bit of a journey if you wanted to get a word in. So when I got older, I took a few courses in writing novels and writing short stories. I did that with Big Smoke Writing Factory in Dublin, where I grew up. And since then, I sort of just been writing short stories for the last couple of years. And in 2020, I guess I decided I wanted to kind of make it into a career. So I've been looking into writing a novel and getting some of my short stories published.
That was so good. I didn't even know that about your past, so that's nice information.
Inside of the game.
Alex, how about yourself?
Yes. So I've sort of written stories and things since I was very young. I spent a period of time doing a lot of music criticism for various sort of street rags and things, and like interviewed sort of artists and stuff, and that was really cool. But then I just fell off writing for a really long time. And then recently, in the last couple of years, I've come back into writing a lot of short stories, a lot of things sort of in the fantasy, horror, sort of like twist tale things, and done quite a few of those, submitted a few of those, which has been good. I have also written 2 sort of full manuscripts, one which is sort of more of a sci-fi thing, and another which is like a horror, sort of, I guess urban horror. I don't know if that's a term, but basically set sort of around Sydney. It's sort of like a haunted house thing, and that is currently being shopped around to beta readers to find out where there are any horrible glaring holes. And that's pretty much where I'm at. I'm about to start a new project, which is sort of based off a little short story, and I'll get into that at some point. But that's my sort of jam.
I really like this exercise. It really is just didn't know that about you either, Alex.
Another thing about Alex is he's weirdly prolific. He writes a lot.
It's true.
Which is really good.
He's uncomfortably prolific is what you want.
Well, I mean, I think Ali probably writes quite a bit as well. So, but thank you. I appreciate it.
Matan, how about yourself?
Hi, my name is Matan Elul, and I almost got into film school. I applied and then I withdrew to a film school in Jerusalem because I was told I got a visa to Australia, and I thought, Australia could be fun. So I didn't go to film school in Jerusalem, and I did go to Australia instead. And I kind of wanted to write my whole life, but my teenage years were full of unfinished projects, just like 10 pages of a book, 30 pages of a book, 129 pages of a book, but yet not a book. So what I did do is I joined a group called The Open Genre, and it really did wonders for me. I even sold a story, got some short stories get attention, and I'm working on a novel at the moment, dark fantasy, exactly like Phoenix so aptly described earlier.
It's city-ish.
City-ish. I want it on the blurb, okay? I want it on the blurb. It's city-ish.
Nothing sold books like the
ish. Anyway, that's it. Just chugging along like the rest of you.
Yep. And was because you predominantly write in English, correct? I think it's cool also because that's your second language, right? Hebrew was your first?
For context, I am an English teacher. So that kind of helped me master the language myself. But yeah, it was a decision to write not in Hebrew, which is my mother tongue, and give it a crack in English. Yeah, it's an adventure, I'll tell you that.
Yeah, no, I think that's really cool. It's a fully different expression, really, choosing to write in a language that's your second. Paddy.
I've known Alex for years. He and I were in a band together for a long time. And then I met the rest of you guys in Open Genre, the group Matan just mentioned. We all met online in Open Genre, which is like an offshoot of Writing New South Wales, which was a wonderful thing to do. If you're listening or watching this, join a writing group. It's so, so useful. I've been writing since I was about 11, but I was writing Dungeons and Dragons content. I was the forever DM, which means I was always the one roped into running the game. And at some point I realized that I've written like millions of words towards this thing that no one except like a small group of nerd friends will ever see. Like, what the hell am I doing? Why would I do this? So now I'm finally starting to write for an audience larger than 6 people. I appreciate it when I actually turn up on time. Yeah, I love the weird. I love science fiction. I love Philip K. Dick and all that kind of madness. Anything that makes you feel uncomfortable and strange and uncanny is really my jam. I'm writing. Yeah, I don't know what else to say. I hate talking about myself. Sometimes I write.
Yeah. And then myself, I don't know. It wasn't even until recently that I realized I had a love of writing when I was a kid, because I did do some writing adventures I wrote some adventures as a kid, just some random writings. Also, like looking back at the first story I have recorded that I wrote, my spelling is comically atrocious and like terrible. I was in like 4th grade, which is not, I should have had a better grasp, but whatever. But anyway, I put it to bed for a while, didn't really do much with it, but I always kind of loved the potential I felt looking at an open page that had nothing on it, and the fact that I could put anything I wanted on it. And I love the quiet that books created when I read them. I love that it felt like a space that only I was in, and that felt really special to me. Eventually later I started writing and wanted to test myself to really start putting it out there. And this was a children's book, or what I thought was a children's book at a time. And ultimately that became the vehicle that led me to start taking it seriously and start leaning into it a bit more, started working with editors for the first time, started going to conferences for the first time, started talking to people in the industry. I eventually joined the writers group, which was one of the biggest upgrades in my career that I felt. And then I started looking into, if I'm not being published, like how can I make money to support this lifestyle as well as continue to hone this skill? So I'm doing a lot of work in freelance editing at the moment, been doing a lot of work there, do a lot of children's books there. That is my specialty. And I've actually just taken on my first ghostwriting contract. Someone has hired me to ghostwrite for them. So I'll be taking on that new adventure coming up here, which feels pretty cool and exciting. And yeah, I'll be published in a poetry anthology coming up. It's a poet friend of mine that runs Poetica Bondi in Sydney. She's published Alphabet for Women and Alphabet for Men is in the works. I'm not going to put any hard promises on her right now because obviously that is it's not done yet. But yeah, so some things in the works coming up, and yeah, just kind of nurturing that budding career. It's very satisfying and it fills me with quite a lot of life.
Phoenix, what's the genre you're ghostwriting?
It's going to be like a self-help book, more or less. Huh. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
I thought you were going to be writing for a politician for a moment there.
Mm-hmm. No, it's self-help is, I guess the largest archetype I would put it under. But it is taking place in an area that I have a bit of exposure to. So, and I know the person as well. So we have a good connection there.
Oh, that helps.
Yeah. We're just going to start kicking off the like interview research data gathering phase.
Fun.
Yeah, it's going to be cool. And so a couple like Paddy mentioned the open genre book, or not open genre book, the open genre writing group, and
Genre about book.
Could be a book eventually.
could be a book. Yeah, that is where we all met, and I guess we could talk. Matan, would you like to? Matan, Alex, do you want to talk a little bit more about that? Matan, the heart and soul of the group.
Yeah.
So I was gonna make a Marvel reference, but I just didn't know if that's gonna, if that's gonna land. But
can try it anyway.
If you're Marvel
Yeah, hit
nerds,
it.
I'm kind of the Iron Man because I was there first. I'm gonna explain why Ali is Nick Fury, but I'm gonna explain later.
I'm not even gonna argue with you. Like you're saying these things, you're right.
Of course, you're not arguing.
You even have the
America.
beard.
Anyway, my point is this: the moral of the story, guys and ladies, and whoever's listening, if there's a tiny voice in your head telling you to do something a little crazy, go ahead and do it. And hopefully, by the end of the story, you'll know what I mean. So, I was in the open genre group. I was there for years. Like for 3-4 years, maybe 3.5 before you guys started trickling in. And one day I just woke up and I thought to myself, man, my mom's birthday is coming up. It would be nice to play her favorite song on the guitar for her birthday. And I thought, like, I don't know jack about how to play guitar. But fortunately, like literally 10 steps out of my house is this huge banner for G4, I want to say.
Yeah.
Was it G4? G4 Guitar School. And I'm like, okay, I'm just going to walk in and ask the nice guy, like, hey, is it normal if I just want to be taught one song? I don't want to learn guitar. Just teach me one song. And
So good.
being the pleasant lad that he is, he said, yeah. And that's Alex Eldridge, our very own.
I like to imagine that he had
write?
really long hair at this point, just to show that this is a story taking place in the past. Yeah, it's like, what's up? Hey, it's me, Alex.
How's it going, man?
And for context, what year would have this been?
It would have been 2018, I think.
Okay, yeah.
I think I was about
Like the summer of 18.
yeah.
Summer of 18.
Summer of 18.
Summer of 18.
I can actually tell you because I've got something that I wrote around this period, so I can give you pretty much the exact time.
I love that
Was
Precipice
reading-
fiction has
were you-
more.
Were you inspired by me to write it? That's why you...
Yeah, I think so. I think there was an element of that there because I know you'd mentioned that you were a writer, and I was like, well, that's pretty cool. I'd like to do that. I'd like to. Let's see. And I got the original draft here. Let me see.
Have you shown it to me? Because at that time you were kind of showing me a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, it would have been. Well, hang on. I created 2019, about midway through 2019, I think it was.
Okay.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. So Alex is teaching me to play guitar. P.S. I suck. But as we go along, we kind of delve into each other's lives a bit more. And at some point, Alex is like, hey, let's go grab a beer, right? That's how it went?
Yeah. Well, actually, I think you finished up for a while. I think you finished up on the guitar, and then I was like, So
it's post-birth. Yeah.
I want to start writing. I want to start doing some writing. What's the best way to, write and make sure you got plenty of like motivation to do it? Find someone else. So I was like, what's that guy's name? And it was Matan. And I looked him up, and I think I messaged you a few times, and eventually I got through, and I was like, hey, do you want to catch up and talk about writing? And we did, and we just had like a really nice little lunch at a cafe in Newtown, and we were like, oh, this is cool.
It became like a weekly thing, I would say.
Yeah, pretty much, because we live quite close.
An unspoken set thing in my week was that I meet Alex and talk about something he wrote. We didn't even say, hey, let's do this every week. It just kind of ended up being almost every week, I want to say.
Pretty much, I'd say. Yeah, eventually that was just pretty much every week. And then you were like, hey, I'm in this other thing. It's called, you'd actually mentioned it a while ago, and I was like, oh, well, I usually teach on Thursdays. But at some point, I think my schedule became free, and I was like, oh, I can, So I showed up to that and started attending that. and then I was in the.
And you brought.
And then I brought Paddy. I talked to Paddy and I was like, "Hey, Paddy, I'm in this open genre thing. Do you write?" And I very specifically remember Paddy. We were walking around because he was making a board game thing at the time, and I remember walking. We were talking to. I was talking to him, and he was like, I did a bit of writing, but I don't think really writing is for me. Like, it doesn't. Like, I don't really enjoy it. And I was like, "Oh, well, writing's great. You can do all this stuff." Blah, blah. And then eventually, I think about a month or two later,
Writing's great.
Yeah, writing is so great, man.
Yeah,
if you're not writing, you should kill yourself. No.
Made a difference.
I haven't heard your Adam Sandler voice until now, and I'm kind of happy it came up.
For timeline purposes, I think I snuck into the open genre group before Paddy joined. Is that correct, Matan?
Paddy showed up to the physical meeting. That was the glory of Paddy joining. Is that Paddy first showed up to a physical meeting.
It would have been very
not even
close.
to a writing meeting.
I think.
So that would have been before me.
No, you came too. No, you
were
came
there
too.
Alex.
You were there.
Oh, that was just like a meetup lunch, wasn't it? That we're talking about.
Yeah, and that's Paddy's.
Okay. I would have been in the group for a good 6 months before then. I think.
Yeah,
I was.
Yeah. Oh, maybe so. Oh, there you go.
Well, then I'll jump in since we're kind of talking chronologically. So my memory was mid 2019. So you guys must have been in it before then. That around that time, that's when I started getting serious about, look, I know how to write a screenplay, but I have no idea how to write a book. That sounds terrifying. I know how to edit 90 pages of a screenplay, but manuscripts are 300 pages. That's insane. How do you even do? So I started doing a Writing New South Wales course called Year of the Novel. And that kind of similar to you, Matan, I had a lot of false starts at writing this fantasy series, this idea in the back of my head. And I'd get a long way through and then I'd give up and stop. 2019 was the year I wanted to get serious. And I'm like, no, I'm going to finish this first full manuscript, going to do it. And a part of that push was me signing up for... No, surely I've got my dates wrong. No, because I joined mid-pandemic. The pandemic
I can check. I got
You're
folders
online.
with every file.
I love this. Okay, now we're making a true crime podcast as we try and find out the facts.
You keep talking.
All right.
Keep talking.
Tom, can you enhance that, please? Can we check that date?
Zoom in on that pixel right there.
I
got folders for every online meeting. So I'm just gonna look up because Ali just showed up and started reading.
Yeah, no, I'd barge my way in. I'm like, guys, I'm a busy person. I need feedback on this tonight. Thank you.
But it wouldn't have been because they don't let you read.
I just wrote to Majesty.
Yeah.
I'm sorry?
No, you're correct, Alex. The open genre has a rule that you don't read your first night there. And I politely asked Jack, I'm like, can we just waive this? And he's like, yeah, I guess.
I suppose.
I don't know. Jack wasn't willing to stand up to me. So I just barged my way in and started reading to everyone. Okay, yes. So, I joined pandemic. So it must have been like March 2020. I must have joined, or June. Anyway, I'm editing Majesty. Majesty's at that point was not amazing, but I have a similar uplift story that everyone else has. That I feel like the moment I joined open genre, everything started to click. I went from just someone mucking around with words, trying to make them work, to like really starting to get a handle of the craft. And really feeling like beta reading swaps was the most valuable decision I ever made in terms of trying to upskill my writing. Been a part of open genre ever since. And I feel like I slowly watched Paddy, Phoenix, and James become more and more regular members after me. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that because I think I joined before James, unless James was coming and then it stopped coming for a bit. And then I came in the interim and then you came back. I don't know if that.
No, I think I was the last one to join into the group. So I joined kind of late 2020 or early 21.
Okay. Yeah. I came in, it would have been like mid 2020, I'm pretty sure, or maybe 2021, 2020. I don't know. It was definitely pandemic, thick in the pandemic. But I remember I joined because it was actually a recommendation from the editor I was using at the time. which was amazing advice. And I'd used her a few times at that point, and she had helped me quite a bit. And then at one point, I sent her like 3 manuscripts at once, which, like, you know, it's not cheap. Like it's like, you know, money and stuff. And she came back, and it was relatively like there's quite a bit of work to do here, sort of thing. Like that was the general gist. And it was like, ooh. So she was at the end of it, like she was very nice, and be like, I recommend like looking into writers groups so you could get feedback more regularly, and it doesn't need to be such an investment to do these things and stuff. And like amazing advice, because basically that led to me not using her anymore. But I still use her.
Bad business advice. Great advice for you.
Yeah, excellent human advice and just career advice. But so then I reached out. She recommended writing New South Wales, and I joined, went shopping for groups, sent out a few emails, didn't hear anything back for like a month and a half, like just absolute radio silence. I was like, well, there's that. And then randomly I get this call, and it's this man named Jack, and he's like, hello, we have this writers group. And I was like, who are you? Like, what is this about? And then it ended up being about a writers group, and he's like, yeah, we're meeting this time, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, oh yeah, that'd be great. I'd love to come. And then I did. And it was, amazing learning, because one, it held me to a regular schedule of like, I want to have something to read this week. I want to push through this next chapter. I want to polish this up so I can get it to the writers group. Like it gave me a set, regular, recurring deadline, which was massive for me, as well as like, I really started to learn oh gosh, weird words are coming to mind.
Craft.
I wanted to, the craft of feedback. That's way better. I wanted to say my feedback dexterity. I'm like, that's terrible.
I like that.
But like my feedback craft got way better, because like I was, the feedback I was getting was excellent, as well as just hearing people give feedback. Like I remember like Matan was giving certain things, and I'd just be like, that's an excellent note. Like that's amazing. And I'd actually be taking like meta notes of people's notes, because they became elements of stories that I started really looking more critically at and stuff. And I felt like excellent practice for even giving notes, which eventually just added to my craft, which led to, I don't know, it helped me a lot as an editor now. Excellent. Amazing stuff. Yes.
I'll just say I have found the date, Ali. I found the first feedback I ever gave to you.
Yay.
Whoa.
To the first bit of Majesty. It's June 11th.
June 11th, 2020.
2020, just like 2 months into the lockdown. I would say.
Yeah.
Which makes sense. But Paddy, you must have joined a little later, because you came to the physical meeting. Yeah.
I'm so bad with dates, man.
I do have the information for a price.
Well, that's special. June 11th.
So I must have joined 2021 then. Like, because I feel like it was around June. I feel like it was cold out, and.
But you could have maybe just missed. Do you remember what's the first thing you ever brought? Okay, we can discuss it later.
Yeah.
Because the group does intakes. I feel like maybe I may have been the intake batch before James and Phoenix. Yeah.
Because I know.
Yeah.
I know that I was talking to Jack for about 6 weeks about joining, because he was saying, there's someone coming next week, and we don't have 2 people have their first meeting.
And I think that may have been Phoenix. Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. I had never put a person in that role.
Consider that.
Like, that's the person who's stopping me getting into the group this week.
I'm the usurper.
Put the brakes on you, James.
Before we move on, Matan, would you like to speak we keep saying Jack. Who is Jack? Do you mind just doing a special shout out to who this person is and give context?
Jack, if you're listening, thanks for convening. So the Open Genre Group always has a convener who is the person in charge of maintaining the numbers of the group. Now, that doesn't mean just making sure there are enough people, but also making sure there are not too many. And that's what Jack used to do. He used to read applications through New South Wales, write, and he would just kind of hold them on a low burn, kind of like he did with you, James and Phoenix, until the time's right, until another person doesn't kind of show up. Yeah.
He's just a great character. And I think he's just been a
like
good friend to each of us in a small way. He's a personality.
Yeah. He's a mentor in a sense. You know?
Yeah. James, did you have anything else about any other joining story that you wanted to throw in? Any other?
I guess it was more just the fact that I'd been kind of writing in a vacuum for a while, and I knew that I needed to start bringing it to people and getting feedback on it in case people were like, "Oh, you can't write. These are absolutely terrible. You should stop." So I was like, "Oh, I need to like start getting feedback now, so I can start identifying problems with like the short stories I've been writing." So yeah, that was just my reason for looking into a group. And like I said, I was ages trying to find one because I kind of started right at the beginning of the pandemic, sending emails back and forth and people telling me that they were closed to new members and different things like this. And then back and forth with Jack. And then, I would have joined, I think it was probably around the summer. So it would have been the summer in Australia. So it would have been kind of going from 2020 into 2021.
Man, your first story was so good. I just remember my first impression. When you started reading that, I'm like, holy moly.
Yeah.
James writes horror, and it's very
It was just
impactful horror.
terrifying.
And
stays with you horror.
Thank you.
This is great in a writer's group because it's sort of this wonderful slap in the face. It's like, and suddenly,
I just turned on the lights when the guy was reading. I'm not even joking.
Yeah. So yeah, that's how we all came together, and then
and then the Nick Fury moment, right?
And then the Nick Fury moment.
The Precipice Assemble.
Yeah. So if Matan's our Iron Man, I then what was I motivated by? I guess watching the open genre group, I kind of saw the six of us. We were the fic writers of the group, speculative fiction. We obviously all had a shared interest in writing in that space. And open genre is interesting in that you are encouraged to bring multiple genres, but there was kind of a clear divide between the people who read spec fic and could give advice on tropes, and then other members of the group who were just like, I don't read this stuff at all.
It was an age distinction, right? I think everyone over 40, just no real interest in what
they're doing. There was also a bit of an age divide, a little bit.
Definitely the youngest.
A little bit.
But they'll get really mad if they listen to this, because last time I went to the group, I said the millennials of the group are working on a thing, and they're like, "Oh, the millennials of the group," and it became a real sore spot. I really put my foot in it.
We all understand there's a divide.
So I'm going to say the distinction is people who read spec fic and those who don't. It just happens to. There's also an age line along that as well.
All great writers too, and
they're phenomenal.
I'll just say that you guys missed out on a brilliant fantasy writer, Alita, who was like in her 70s, and she wrote like Ursula Le Guin kind of stuff.
Oh, amazing!
Awesome.
She was fudging brilliant.
Before our time. Damn.
And she was a huge fan of my stuff because I always felt like she was
excellent
my
taste
spec fic before you guys came.
Oh, fantastic!
But
that's cool.
Yeah, so I guess what I pitched was so we were all working on I noticed we were all like the way fantasy and sci-fi naturally gravitate is like we've kind of got budding ideas for series, like these will be bigger, longer form things, and we're all just kind of plodding away on our book ones, and it's such a feat to try and, as your first thing to try and pitch, this is a book one of something. Like it's almost like we're setting an even bigger mountain for ourselves to climb as we're entering the publishing industry. So I was trying to think about what are some like more achievable footholds? How can we break into this thing? And the idea I had was perhaps an anthology of sorts, contributing short stories that were, say, teasers or hooks for what our bigger worlds are going to be. So I kind of floated the idea with all these guys being like, all right, we all have our bigger worlds, our bigger series. Would we like to submit create brand new short stories specifically for an anthology of sorts? And I think that idea went over well in hindsight, now that we're here. And we came together and we've given ourselves the little banner Precipice Fiction now as we work towards kind of this mini goal of creating this anthology that will showcase our larger fantasy and sci-fi worlds we're working on. But it also gives us the chance to keep this kind of collective going now. we're in the back of our mind, we're like, after this first publications, we can do future anthologies. And then this podcast came about as another branch of that idea. So it's kind of exciting that became kind of the pitch to create what this is, Precipice Fiction.
Yeah, it's sort of like a hub, like just going into the creation of the podcast thing. Just if we won't take too much time on that, but yeah, it was, I was sort of sitting around one day in the States because I just literally just after COVID the lockdown had finished, I went over to the US to essentially go and like bring back my girlfriend, which I have hence done, and that's a whole different story. But and while I was there, I was like, you know, I've always wanted to get into like some sort of audio genre because I come from a musical background, so that's just my sort of yin. So I think I messaged Paddy, and because I think we'd talked about it at some point, and was like, hey, I've got this idea for a podcast. I'd really like to do this, and we sort of floated around a few ideas, and then I think the next meeting we have, because we have like meetings like monthly just to talk about what's all going on, I sort of floated it, and then everyone else kind of jumped in and was like, oh yeah, that would be a really good idea, we can do this, and we set up sort of a structure and things, and then ever since then we've been sort of doing it on a weekly basis, and then we're gonna, this is technically the first episode that I think will be released, just as a bit of a
we've already recorded like 6. We've done this completely out of
7 or 8. I think
Here we
it's
are. It's number one.
broken the illusion.
Like this is the first time we've ever done this. Exactly.
We're going to take you backstage for a moment.
Yeah, really good flow. I think it's a natural extension if you're doing any kind of activity in the 21st century to do a podcast. It's so easy. It's so basic to get it out there, and it's presumably really good marketing. We'll see. If you're listening to this or watching this right now, then
obviously it worked.
Then it's great marketing.
Plan has succeeded. It's kind of a cliche that everyone has a podcast now, but I think for a good reason, right?
Yeah.
It's fun.
Certainly I've been enjoying it so far. It's been great.
So off of that, like we talked about the podcast. Ali mentioned the anthology, and so that kind of leads us into like what we intend to do. Why Precipice Fiction? So we're writing this anthology. You're listening to this podcast. Why are you doing it? Does anybody have any? Why are you doing it? Why are you here?
For the insight.
What do you want from us?
For the zingers of knowledge that we depart every week on different subjects. Tune in.
Different subjects, different genres, different takes.
We do have different takes. I think we all have a lot of insight because we're all writers, but we're massive fans of reading as well.
Mm-hmm.
We love literature and we love genres, and we've got a lot to say about it.
I'll say this: if you don't have a writing group, get a writing group.
Absolutely.
But we can be your wine-sided writing group. We can kind of take you into how
wine-sided.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, because we can't hear what the listener is saying.
We're your parasocial writing group, essentially.
Yeah.
If you want to see what it's like, this is what it's like. I mean, we come up with projects, we share with each other, and we give each other deadlines, which is extremely useful.
Important.
Looking at you, Ali.
It is. You need the motivation to finish.
I also find it pretty therapeutic, really. Like I forget what James had said before during the writers group, he was writing in a vacuum. It always felt so good to me to be writing and then go to a conference or go to a place where I'm immersed in the community, because otherwise I am just working alone. And like the space in between submitting things and getting feedback can be so long, and it's like, hello, is anyone out there sometimes? So it can feel really nice to just have like get with a group, put a podcast in your ears, whatever, and listen about it. Hear other people talk about how they have no idea how two ends of their plot are going to sync up yet, or hear other people talk about how I heard someone say they're writing a murder mystery one time and they didn't know who the killer was. And it's just like, oh, thank God I'm not alone in these struggles and these thoughts. And, and one thing, this might just be me, but one thing I like about the Pros and Cons name is sometimes I feel like a pro, sometimes I feel like an absolute con. And like, I think that's...
How has no one made that joke yet? Oh my God.
Well, what do you mean?
How did no one make that one yet?
Well, this is the first episode. This is
Okay.
It happened really quick.
Right.
This is like Star Wars time. Okay.
But it's true. So we celebrate the victories, and we also can all relate to feeling like we don't know what we're doing at different times. That's completely normal. So join us in not knowing what you're doing sometimes, and come make writing your career.
Join us in bumbling forward. Another real benefit of having a regular group is the authenticity of feedback. No one wants to give it. I think we innately as people don't want to give negative feedback, especially if this is the first time we've ever criticized someone's writing. We don't want to say, I think this could use work. I don't think it's good. And it's hard sometimes to build up that level of trust with people feedback wise, where you can give really honest feedback. And I think we've all got to the point with each other where we can say, this isn't working, here's why this isn't working, and trust that the person on the other end won't be offended. That is so, so valuable to have your regulars where you've got that trust with back and forth, right?
For context, how we're editing the anthology is we upload a draft of the stories, and then we have at it. We assign first readers because there's a fairly big workload in being someone's first reader. You're making the first comments. So we make sure someone is someone's first reader, but then after that, we open it up to the 4 others will come in and then agree or disagree, kind of in the rolling comments on the side of a Google Doc. And
the debater dog pile.
Just a bedlam.
I think it's been incredibly successful though. So as a writer, if you only get one feedback, you're like, oh, okay, I have some instincts that agree with that one. I have some instincts that I'm not so sure about that other one. So if you get someone else who then comes in, they'll be like, oh yes, I see where they're coming from, but I disagree. And then as the writer, you're like, oh, okay. There's two sides to this, and it
feels like less. It feels like less monolithic if there's more than one writer. Because if someone gives you a thing and you're like, hey, that scene that happened there, I didn't like how that worked. Like that just felt wrong to me. You can be like, oh, that wasn't good. I guess I got to change that. But then if someone else comes in and goes like, no, I saw they were doing that, you can at least get these 2 different sides of it. So very, very helpful tactically, I think.
Yeah, it's like a democracy of opinions.
Yeah, and I like that we're at a point where we can we go into that dog pile ready to agree and disagree with each other. And it's still quite respectful, and we get that everyone gets their say, and we just allow that to happen. I think that has been incredibly beneficial to the stories we're going to put into the anthology, and that we've been quite rigorous in trying to really polish these stories and make them, as good as possible.
Yeah, I think it's really fun that when you read the anthology, you got to realize that everybody's fingerprints are in all the cookie jars. Everybody's been touching everything. Everybody's been touching everyone. I know it sounds terrible, but that's just how it is.
It's a petri dish of literary criticism.
It is. And my favorite part is when I get to this 3rd or 4th reader, and I really feel like this person has read every single comment so far, and they're really in the thick of the conversation, like they were there the whole time. It really feels like, this this person was here the whole time, and they know what Phoenix said, and they know what Alex said, and they just it feels really organic, and I love it. Even though some of them could be months apart, by the way. Like I got sometimes comments from December by James, because he was my first reader, and maybe someone else's comments come in April because they've gone on a different chronological order with the stories. So that's really fun.
I think you've described it as feedback on heroin once, Matan, and that we just kind of supercharged steroids. Okay, so that's my own implication then. But the idea that we've kind of taken a natural beta reading process that we learned through open genre, and then we went nuts. We're like, all right, everyone's allowed in because we trusted each other, we supercharged it.
And of course, another reason for doing this is making our own luck with publishing, right? It's hard to break into publishing. It's hard to get noticed. So self-publish. Do it yourself. Get your own fan base. Market yourself. This is a huge part of what we're doing. So we can actually show off our work without having to go the traditional route of getting to the point where we can be noticed by a publisher.
That's worth mentioning as well, that part of the pitch of doing this was let's this anthology be us, like our baby steps. Let's do the practice publishing rather than any one of us going out on a limb with our book one, our precious baby, and having a go at self-publishing and inevitably falling on our faces.
So
Yeah,
It's like if you have two children and you like one of them less, and you're thinking, which one should I send to this camp that I don't really trust? And the councils look kind of dodgy. Just, that's what we're doing. We're picking the kid that is.
yeah, exactly.
So please buy our anthology. Please read our least favorite child.
Not that it's our least favorite child, but it's lower stakes because we're only submitting
He's tough.
short stories.
He can take it.
Rather than our full manuscripts. And it almost is going to be stronger because it is 6 separate things coming together, but we haven't felt like we've had to write an entire book on ourselves. But yes, it is us practicing the self-publishing process, learning how to do it. A lot of our podcast topics are going to be about writing craft in general. But I think the later we get down the line, we can actually stop, reflect, and now talk about how our anthology is going. What are we learning as we are doing this self-publishing thing?
I think we should definitely do an episode at some point in the future about self-publishing and what we've learned.
Yeah.
That's a steep mountain to climb, and it helps. We've got 6 brains all learning different aspects of it.
Yeah,
it's a lot. It's huge.
That's the thing. It's like the one horse pulls with 1 horsepower, but 2 horses doesn't pull with 2 horsepower. It's more like 3 horsepower. I don't know how that scales.
What?
Yeah.
That's
Okay, so
what do you mean?
the analogy is
the whole thing.
if we have 1 horse.
Hold on, this is important.
Right? Yeah, no. Everyone shut up. I'm talking about horses.
All the listeners, we're going to put a brief break on literature for a moment.
Come
we
back
have
in
something to
5
say
minutes.
about horses.
No, but it's 2 horses. Why is it 3 horsepower?
That's the point. It's an exponential thing. So what I'm saying is the more brains you have attached to something, the more effective it's going to be. It's not just like the power of 6. It's infinitely multiplied, or exponentially multiplied in terms of the brain power and how we're coming
so
to it.
why aren't we
Infinite
using
power.
horses for everything?
What I'm saying is we are infinitely
just use
powerful.
horses for everything.
That's the takeaway.
10 horses
The horses
together is
take
like
us
the
to
power
strength.
of the sun.
Yeah,
Just
I'm
goes
saying
up
the
like
Phoenix is
crazy.
10 horses and he is infinitely powerful, and we should just hitch our wagon to him and then we're good.
No, I love that we now have infinite knowledge on self-publishing is what you've come back around to. So that's what we want to share in podcast format in conclusion.
And now when we give feedback on our stories and there's a part we really like, we can just say, infinite horses. This is doing so much work.
Next anthology will be called Infinite Horsepower. Just
Or
I actually don't mind that.
I would go with infinite horsepower or infinite horses.
You guys are laughing, but I'm going to the stables after this. Okay, I got some questions.
let's go to the track.
I'm already thinking about the artwork.
I'm writing it. I'm legitimately writing it down. I'm legitimately writing that name
It could be
down.
like an Ouroboros of horses.
Next time I see you, somebody better have answers.
Anyway,
That was so funny. I have to take my shirt off now.
Wow.
It increased my warmth too much. The infinite horsepower was too warm, and now we're here. And yes.
Anyway,
Should we introduce the actual name of our anthology for our listeners?
Yeah, I agree. Yes.
Ellie, would you like to do it? I'll drum you.
So I believe, oh gosh, I'm going to falter. So we are calling it the New Mythic.
There you go.
Yes. I was just trying to remember because we agreed on like a science fiction and fantasy anthology.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
the tagline.
We actually spent so much time voting on this and I've gone and forgotten what we actually agreed upon. But I think we are calling it a new... Oh, no, I got it wrong. It is... I'm going to go again. The New Mythic, a science fiction and fantasy anthology. By Precipice Fiction. Edited by Precipice Fiction.
Yeah.
So that's what you're keeping an eye out. And our goal is to have this published by November 2022. So that's
maybe.
Oh, that's
Maybe
the goal we've given
I think,
ourselves.
yeah, that's the goal.
It is maybe.
That's happening.
I will not be held to that announcement.
Well, if we fall short, we know who we're blaming. So.
Oh my god.
As you can say, we take things very, very seriously here. So,
Yes. And so we've mentioned the anthology. We've talked about horses. You know you're going to get the anthology already. But what? So we'll. I think it would be good to just run through and just give a little teaser taster, little warmer for our stories. So we'll just run through really quick. Allie, we'll start with you.
Sure. So in the spirit of us being, 6 writers, 6 worlds. So the world that my short story comes from it's very much high fantasy. It's borderline YA adult. And it's very much like shonen anime inspired, in that I'm leaning heavily on there's a lot of action sequences. There's got to be a lot of fight sequences. And basically the world I've built is loosely Japan inspired, but also has a bit of Australiana flora and fauna. So there's a lot going on. And yeah, it is basically a story of a bit of betrayal, young kids finding their place in a world of politics and machinations.
Right. Alex.
Dope.
Yeah. So essentially, my world is it's kind of like in the same way that Stephen King kind of writes in a world that is similar to our own, except with sort of some fantastical things going on. Basically, it's a place where a bunch of kids kind of walk out of their house and discover that they've kind of walked into a zombie apocalypse, and it's very much following kind of the behaviors and attitudes that maybe 21-year-old boys who are like riled up on beers and testosterone would take, and it very much follows that path. So yeah, that's vaguely what it's about.
It's a good one. James.
Yeah, so my story is set in a post-war, kind of a post-apocalyptic America, following a group of people who essentially ferry people and cargo throughout the different territories, and the different territories are kind of divided in their different attitudes and different religions and different politics and stuff. And it kind of focuses on the inner conflicts within the group of people working on the convoy and how they deal with the various obstacles that they encounter along the way.
That was really well done as a summary, by the way.
Thank you.
Matan.
I guess the world mine is set in is a bit of a low fantasy kind of like a rural area. Stories basically, this man goes lost in a mine, and afterwards his 2 children go looking for him. The only twist is that the mine is completely dark and something's happening there. And meanwhile, the daughter needs to decide if the voices in her head are real, and if they are real, what do they want from her?
And it's got some great tie-ins with Matan's longer work that he's working on, the Glyphlight series. It's really nicely woven in.
Yeah.
Thanks, Paddy.
It's true, Matan.
And off of that, Paddy.
Tribal, desert punk, sci fantasy in that technology takes the place of magic. And that's all I'm going to say.
Right on.
And lizards.
And
totally
lizards.
Do not forget the lizards.
Oh,
Infinite horsepower. No,
I want to find out more about the lizards. You'll just have to pick up the new Mythic anthology coming out in November. Maybe.
And
Would 2 lizards have the power of 3 lizards? Sorry.
That's an entire different.
That's another podcast episode.
You can't just throw that out.
Infinite lizard.
Sorry.
So mine is basically like a quirky. It takes both like heavy tones and quirky tones. It's kind of like a quirky alt history sci-fi where technology develops at a different pace and a bit more. There's certain alterations in this timeline that led it to develop quite a bit faster, to where people kind of end up with more of a super intelligence kind of wrapping the world, but not in the usual oppressive way that one might think. And a fun fact about this story, it does not read like an ASMR video, but it was inspired by an ASMR video. So there's a...
Really?
Yep.
Didn't know that.
Yep. There it is. I'm not scared to say it.
I'll ask you about that later.
I'm not scared to hear
it. But yeah, so very, very different worlds, very different writing approaches, very different styles, very different genres that we kind of gravitate towards from this prompt. and it creates quite a rich, fun little collection of stories. And off of that, I'd just like to say, if you are a writer starting out, or relatively developed in your career and just looking for any sort of advice, or at least like some sort of little backboard to bounce things off of, even if it is just audio feedback where you're sort of plugged into the community a little bit more. If you find enjoyment from this, and you know other people that would get enjoyment from this, share it. Bring the community together. Don't hold it to yourself. That also helps us keep doing it. The energy gets to grow instead of tapering out, and it gets to build and create more of a community and unisolate a lot of writers out there. Maybe some writing groups will form from this. Who knows? But yeah, share it. Don't keep it to yourself. And from that, we do like to end each episode with a quote. And I believe Alex has our quote for this one.
So the quote I have is, "There is no power for change greater than a community discovering what it cares about," by Margaret J. Wheatley. So I think that's a nice little send off for how
that
we all
feels good. Yeah,
it just
Nice.
really hits in the feels there. So, yeah.
I love that. So with that, from all of us over at Precipice Fiction, with all of our horsepower, may the horsepower be with you in your writing endeavors, and may, good luck. Good luck with your manuscripts. Good luck with what you're doing, and you're doing great.
Get your horses.
Get your horses. Two's stronger than you think. All right. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
You're listening to Pros and Cons, a Precipice Fiction podcast.